resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Well, hello, my friend. Welcome to the Artist Next Level podcast. I am very happy and excited to be here with you today. Thanks for tuning in. Well, my friend, today we're going to talk about the law. Yes, I have with me none other than Sam P. Israel. He's an attorney and managing partner of Sam P. Israel PC. And he is going to help us today understanding copyright. So it's going to be a great conversation. Sam P. Israel is a prominent New York trial and appellate attorney with a highly distinctive commercial litigation practice. He is the founder of Sam P. Israel PC, a select 5-lawyer boutique litigation practice headquartered in New York City's financial district. His clients span modest to multinational corporations to prominent artists and filmmakers. And my friends, I am very excited to have in the show today, Sam P. Israel. Well, hi, Sam. How are you today?
I'm good. Good to be talking to you, Sergio.
Thank you so much for being here today. Now, let me ask you this question. Are you ready to take us to the next level?
I am.
Awesome. Well, Sam, super happy to be here with you because you are going to bring a lot of value to our friends here at the Artist Next Level podcast. This is one of those things that I'm, get questions from a lot of artists who say, Sergio, can you shed a little bit more light about, copyright, or when is it appropriate? How do I protect my work, and so on. So there's so much to talk about, but we're going to have just a small selection of questions that you're going to help us unpack today and give us some feedback into it. But before I do that, Sam, can you tell us a little bit about, yourself, what kind of law you practice and kind of about your interest also in this particular topic?
Sure. I'm a commercial litigator, and my specialty is intellectual property, which is trademark, copyright, and trade secrets. And I litigate cases that deal with those concerns. And my particular interest in art goes back to when I had an art gallery. I used to have an art gallery while I had my law firm, and got hands-on experience in the business and began to develop clientele that are artists and galleries over the years, and have litigated a fair amount of art-related cases.
That is very exciting. That's pretty cool. I never, talked to someone who went from having a gallery into law.
That's me.
That's you. And that's why you're here talking to us today. So, Sam, why don't we start talking a little bit about kind of like one of the first topics here that I want to address is one of the biggest questions that artists have is like, how do I protect, my work from copyright infringement, particularly online, or now with all the social media platforms, as artists, we're expected to post, expected to share, or even if you're not sharing, sometimes, the gallery that you're working with is sharing your work, or, as now happens all the time, so I have a gallery too, and I'm a curator. A lot of times, you have this big show, people come with their cell phones, they take pictures, and now they are in social media, even if the artists did not put them there themselves. So, what are some of the things that artists can do to protect, in the world that we live today and as we go into the future?
Well, let's break it into sets.
Okay.
In terms of people just taking photographs with their cameras of your artwork, there's practically nothing you can do about that. It's pervasive. Right. It affects every industry. People, if you go to hear concerts now, they no longer even give you the message to not take pictures because they expect pictures. Right. However, what you can do is you could prevent the commercial exploitation of your work by registering a copyright in the work. And that's a very simple process. All you have to do is take a photograph of your work and you send it to the copyright office with the form filled out. It's a relatively inexpensive process. And then you'll have it registered. Right. And if anyone at that point uses your work commercially, somebody tries to let's say, put it on T-shirts or tries to make posters of your work, you'll have the advantage of having registered your copyright in the work, and that gives you an advantage in terms of if you have to go after that person and sue them for infringing your copyright.
Okay. And no, that's right. And now I believe you can also do that in batches, right? You don't have to do one at a time, but you can
You
batch.
can do it in batches, exactly. So you can take a batch of your artwork and send it to the Copyright Office, and you'll protect it. Now you get automatic protection for your work as soon as you create it. It's covered by it's subject to copyright protection.
Mm-hmm.
But if you register it before it's copied, you can get additional damages if somebody rips you off, which is why you want to make sure that you register the work as soon as you complete it.
Okay. Now, what happens, which this is a true story, last year from an artist who I follow on Instagram. She makes work that's very graphic, right? And graphic in terms like easy to reproduce. That's what I'm talking about. And so her work, one of her images, which was a beautiful Frida Kahlo image, was taken, and she found out that they were actually selling merchandise in Mexico. The exact same image that definitely looked like it was taken from her Instagram account and used that. So when it's an international, thing like that, what are some of the artist steps that they should do in that case?
Well, the copyright protection doesn't extend extraterritorially. So you can't sue somebody for an infringement that happens overseas. However, it's interesting that you mentioned Frida Kahlo, because there's been a tremendous amount of litigation within the Kahlo family, because people are claiming rights to her image. It's just ironic that you mention it. And there's a lot of litigation that's going on in Mexico right now, and in the States, for reproducing Frida Kahlo's image without the alleged authorization of her family.
Now, even in the case where it is an artist's rendition of the likeness, but not necessarily, a reproduction of her image itself.
It involves other issues. It also involves the right of publicity, and that's something that we didn't talk about. But there's commercial value attached to her likeness,
right?
And one isn't free to just take someone's likeness and reproduce it and capitalize on it, make money off of it, without getting the right authorization to do that. So it might be bad news for your friend, but the proper way to do it would be to get the authority to reproduce Frida Kahlo's image, her likeness, in a commercial context.
That's very interesting, and I'm glad that that the conversation led to this, because even today, this morning, an artist sent a question, because I announced I was going to be talking to you. Sent a question like, how about like there's so much that you see today in art today, particularly pop art, where an artist may appropriate the Gucci logo and do a commentary on it, or the Nike logo and do a commentary on it, and then if they want to make reproductions of that image, are they also infringing in those types of copyright issues?
Now you're touching on an area which is called fair use.
Okay.
So fair use is a defense to a claim for copyright infringement, and fair use means that you're doing something transformative to the copyrighted image. So you're commenting on it. And the basis for having a fair use defense is that we don't want to chill people from commenting, making fun of things, and otherwise having a critical discourse around things that are otherwise protected by the copyright law. So if you have something that says Gucci, but Gucci's crossed out and something's written over it, like, I don't know, a curse word or something.
Right.
And, and I won't get into the issue about, about whether you can get away with having shirts with curse words on them without, whether there's any law that prevents that. But that could be deemed fair use, because it's not taking the image per se, but it's taking the image and transforming it in a way where you're making a comment on it.
Right. Okay. I see. So that's kind of a gray area, right? Because in deciding, that's where the court of law will make those cases, I assume, right?
That's
because
right.
That's where it becomes difficult.
That's right. It could be a close call in some cases as to whether something is genuinely transformative, or whether it's the original.
I see.
and or whether something is being done for a comic purpose, which you can do legally, or
Okay.
whether it's just the original and you're pretending it's comic. You know, it's what a judge would have to determine.
No, that's very interesting conversation, because I'm sure this is a nightmare now for all these brands and so on, with social media being kind of a place where, it makes it so easy for anyone just to grab and take and use and make money out of anything.
Keeps me busy.
Absolutely, right. Why don't we talk a little bit about the Visual Artists' Rights Act of 1990? What exactly that's about?
All right, it's a little bit different than the Copyright Act in the sense that what it does is it purports to maintain the integrity of the art. So it protects against destroying the art or putting it in a context which would be defamatory. The most common instances where you see VARA coming into play is with graffiti artists.
Okay.
So graffiti artists, they create their graffiti, and then let's say the owner of the building wants to paint over the graffiti.
Right.
The graffiti artist, believe it or not, can assert rights under VARA saying that, no, you can't destroy my artwork under VARA, even though the graffiti artist doesn't own the building.
Okay.
And there are cases like that, cases decided in favor of the graffiti artists. And so the point of the act is to preserve the integrity of the artwork itself, as opposed to just protecting the artwork from commercial exploitation.
This is very interesting. So it definitely can be used in a lot of urban environment work, or the work in an open setting in that case. Right.
That's where it mostly comes up. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Sam, do you have like a story of of course, without saying names, but like, might be an interesting story of an artist that you work with, in which, maybe this actually happened using the VARA Act to defend that artist?
Sure. There's a graffiti artist who used what I was talking about before was actually based upon a real case. A graffiti artist painted a building, and it was very attractive graffiti, and it got a huge following. And the owner of the building decided he was going to paint over it, and was sued by the graffiti artist.
Wow.
And the graffiti artist won.
So in that case, the artist had permission to paint it, I assume, for the first time around?
The first time had permission to paint.
Okay.
And then the owner of the building changed his mind and said, you know what, I'm going to use the building for something different now. I'm going to take down that graffiti because it no longer works for me.
Okay.
And then at that point, VARA attached, and he couldn't do it.
I see. And is there a lapse time in which that VARA expires, or as long as the building is up now, that has to stay?
As long as the building is up, it has to stay.
That is very interesting. Because I wonder, about, when I go to Miami and I go to Art Basel, you have Wynwood, which is full of, walls with beautiful artworks. And, a lot of times you come back and like, wait a minute, that's gone now, it's painted over. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that information. I think that would be also very useful
Sure.
for our friends. Now, since you also own a gallery, so also the inner workings of a gallery when it comes to contracts, agreements, and that that have to be done with artists and so on. Can you give us a little bit of light also on things that artists should be aware of when it comes to signing a contract with a dealer or a gallery?
Well, the main thing is optimally you would have a lawyer look at the contract, but assuming that it's too expensive to get a lawyer to look at it, the main thing you want to look for is that you're not giving away rights, that you're not giving away the copyright, that you're not authorizing the gallerist to reproduce your work and make money off of it, to publish the work in books, for instance, and make a profit off of it without your having a say in it, without your giving consent. and having a financial stake in whatever the gallerist decides to do. That's the most common issue that comes up. The other issues that come up are how the work is going to be displayed, in what context, what it's going to be in proximity to. All of those things are subject to negotiation, but those are things to be mindful of when you're looking at a contract with a gallerist.
Okay.
I've had artists who were adamant that they didn't want their work shown next to another artist in group shows because they thought it reflected poorly on their artwork. Things like that could come into play.
Okay. So when a gallery gives the artist a contract, and then the artist can also make amendments or attachments or things of that nature, of course, in communication with the gallery.
Yeah, it depends upon what kind of clout the artist has. I mean, if it's an artist who's in demand and is somebody that lots of galleries would be interested in showing, they have more power to insist upon certain changes to the agreements. Unfortunately, most artists don't enjoy that luxury and and have to just take whatever they can get.
Absolutely. Now, what happens when an artist goes to deliver artwork for a show or so, and there's no contract, there's no agreement, there's nothing? I always advise artists, you need to request that the gallery gives you something. Can you give us a little?
You always have a contract in the sense that you can have an oral agreement, but it would be it's almost inconceivable that somebody would just drop off some artwork and say, do with this whatever you want. I mean, there would have to be some kind of understanding, I assume.
Right.
And whatever that understanding is, even if it's not reduced to writing, it's still an agreement. So, for instance, most galleries they have an arrangement where they will keep 1/3 to a half of whatever proceeds come from the sale of the artwork. That's an understanding that's made orally, and oftentimes it isn't reduced to writing, but it's an enforceable agreement because oral contracts are enforceable.
Okay, and so I assume also an email, agreeing with, for example, the terms of the sale and things like that. Can that also be used in court if necessary in disputes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that would even be better. It would still be an oral agreement if there wasn't an actual written contract, but it would overcome what's called the statute of frauds. So it would be proof of the oral agreement that was reached.
Okay, so it's good then to save all those emails, especially when you're dealing.
Definitely.
With okay, so and maybe that kind of leads us to another question of at what point does an artist need to consider litigation or seeking advice from an attorney and so on?
Depends upon a bunch of things. Number one, depends upon how valuable the artwork is and what's being done with it. If you have a painting that's worth $500,000 and you have a gallery that's reproducing copies of the painting, I mean, and you ask the gallery to stop and they don't stop, that's a litigation. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to determine to do that. It's just a question of dollars and cents. It's how much money is at issue that will dictate whether it makes sense to litigate, and how important the work is to the artist.
I see. I think also now many artists are approached by galleries internationally or art fairs, which now is very common that an artist may be approached by a gallery who wants to show their work in an art fair. So, that even, complicates things a little bit even more in those cases when you are shipping things internationally and the agreements that happen overseas. So are there certain things that as artists we should be aware of when we're working outside of the United States?
Well, like I said before, the Copyright Act doesn't apply extraterritorially. So it would depend upon the law of whatever jurisdiction the artwork is in. However, having said that, if you entrust art to somebody in New York or in the United States, and they do something with the art that makes it go away. That act that took place took place in the United States. So you would have a claim in the United States for either conversion or for some other kind of tort that has to do with damage or the disappearance of the artwork.
I see. Okay. Right. Yeah, because that happens quite often, if the gallery takes it, for example, without the consent of the artist, or without the artist knowing, what's happening with the work.
It happens a lot. It happens a lot. It happens a lot also where galleries will consign artwork to other galleries without telling the artist.
Oh, I see.
Which could be infuriating, but it happens.
I see. No, that's great, Sam. Thank you so much for shedding light on this and your expertise on the subject. Now, Sam, for artists who would like to kind of learn more about this, or have some resources, I'm sure there's a lot of online information, and maybe you also have some resources of your own you might want to share with your friends. Can you share some of that?
Well, what I have books.
Okay.
So I don't go online looking for it, but there's a book called Art Law 1 and Art Law 2. And the author is Lerner and Bressler. Those are the authors of those books, and they're very good books on art law. But there's probably ample information online. I just haven't had occasion to look online because I have legal databases and I've got my books.
Wonderful. And for an artist who may be interested in your own services, is there a website that you can share to our friends?
Sure. It's spi-pc.com. spi-pc.com, and that's for Sam P. Israel PC. That's my law firm. And wonderful. we have 5 lawyers, and we all work in the intellectual property area.
Well, that's awesome, Sam. Thank you so much for your time, for helping us out here, answering these 4 main questions that we had for you. I think they've been very helpful. And I think our friends will also be really happy with that. So any last words, Sam, before we cut for the day?
I hope that everyone who's listening has a wonderful day and a wonderful life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. Thanks to all our friends, and I will see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.